Non-Americans of Reddit, what confuses you the most about America? Just convention. It's how we're used to hearing about it. Also, different jobs pay differently. So I get a check every month, but I think my dad gets one every other week. Some people get them weekly, others on other schedules. Discussing it by year makes it pretty easy to divide up by your own pay periods. Edit, since some people have asked, I don't get a physical paycheck. I use it as a kind of legacy term. I get the money deposited in my account, but in my mind it's my paycheck. From England here. I grew up in a county called West Yorkshire, a semi-rural, semi-urban, working-class county which, along with the rest of Yorkshire, seems completely unique when compared to the other English counties. There is so much slang, grouped and contracted contractions, wouldn't, want, shouldn't, shan't, and the accent here isn't always understandable. Yorkshire slang, especially that spoken by the older generations, sounds and looks like a completely different language, even more so when spelled phonetically. It never ceases to amaze me how easy it is to understand the majority of Americans. They speak with so much clarity, non-specific slang, and the accent just helps. It reminds me of the news reporters. American here. Lived in Burnley, I'm sure you know it, for 6 months for work. Had trouble understanding some folks in Lancashire area. Then one weekend I went to Wales. Forget it, that was terrible, and don't get me started on the Geordies from Newcastle. Overall though it was a few people I had trouble understanding. It was always the older folks. Most of the younger folks were much more easier to understand. Overall I had an amazing time there. I also visited your neck of the woods there as well. Love the countryside. If you look at a dialect map of American English, you'll find a dialect known as the Midlands dialect, can be further divided into North Midland and South Midland. The Midland dialect is what you'd find in large swaths of the Midwest, roughly Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska. The North Midland dialect, found mostly in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, outside the Chicago area, and down into southern Iowa, northern Missouri, and parts of Kansas, is considered by many linguists to be one of the most neutral English language accents. This means that it is the accent most readily understood by a non-speaker. You could take someone from Indianapolis, for example, and drop them into almost any English-speaking country on earth. Our traveling Hoosier, someone from Indiana, may not understand his bartender in Glasgow, his taxi driver in Auckland, or his hotel clerk in Johannesburg, due to regional dialects. However, the bartender, taxi driver, and hotel clerk should have no problems understanding him. For years, news networks and Hollywood voice coaches trained newscasters and actors to speak with a Midlands accent due to understandable nature of the dialect. Because for the longest you could, and so it became an expectation. Post WW2 there were well-paying jobs everywhere, and land was cheap and abundant. Nowadays it's a little different. Cost of living is higher, so it's more commonplace to live with roommates for an extended period of time, and it's also more common to move back in with parents at some point. It's still considered sort of shameful, but lots of people end up doing it, so it's not as big of a deal. I think in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, it's more common to stay with your parents into your 20s. Because it used to be very simple to buy a house. I talked to a lady from a town that boomed industrially in the 1960s. She worked as a cashier at a grocery store and made enough income to buy 4 houses a year based on the average house price in that area. My dad was a medium-wage laborer. He somehow fed a family of 5 and had a house paid off in 10 years in a bustling city. Now in that same area laborers share rent with 6 roommates and have little left over. The times have changed. There's no reason to listen to people who don't realize that. People are focusing on the financial side but missing the cultural side. It's because we have a culture of individualism. Success is about the individual person, not the family or community. If you're still living with your parents, you are seen as relying on other people financially and emotionally, which is a sign of failure. If you move out, You are succeeding as an individual. Your parents being able to comfortably support you doesn't reflect on you in any way. You being able to support your parents financially is seen as a positive, but it's considered weird if they're still living in your house and presumably providing you emotional support. Personally, I'm glad to have lived alone in my 20s, but I agree that this is unfairly stigmatized, given that it's fairly normal in other societies. I think there are at least 3 reasons. Americans are still quite puritanical, and the idea of having sex in the same house, even several rooms away, that one's parents live in is so horrifying to most people that it's just assumed that someone who lives with parents is sexless, or even incel. The ruling classes want an on-demand, mobile proletariat that will go wherever the reptilians decide the jobs are, and thus have, in their never-ending quest to atomize people, thus preventing the existence of interpersonal forces, family, culture, religion, that get in capital's way, put a lot of force behind the stereotype above. Until recently, and now only because of market manipulation and upper-class chicanery, it was really easy to afford your own apartment. You actually could get a decent one-bedroom apartment on an entry-level job in 2001. I'll give you an example where it makes perfect sense. I know of a hospital with free valet during normal hours. As a patient, it's great. You're picking up your loved one. They can't walk far due to injury or surgery or whatever, and the car is right there at the door for you. Or you're dropping your nana off but actually want to walk her in, not just drop her at the door and go park. But they actually rolled it out for their own benefit, because someone would show up to pick up their aunt who just had a procedure and can walk a bit but not much. And knowing this, they'd pull the car up to the entrance, run up to get her, and get held up by the checkout process. Meanwhile their car, and everyone's car who's doing the same thing, is in the damn way. So for the price of a couple FT employees during business hours, you make the experience better for patients, and eliminate the problem of abandoned cars at the door. Tipping was forbidden. As a side note, it confuses me how come American-style homes are so tidy outside. I am always amazed when I use Google Street View to stroll around some random road in the US. I wonder why and how the houses and backyards look so clean, with newly mown Bermuda grass and well-painted roofs and walls. I can't help but compare this to my country, which is a developing one. I'm thinking, what's wrong with our citizens such that when I use Street View on our streets, they're usually filthy. Ordinary American-style homes can only be found in high-class villages and subdivisions here. Edit, corrected 4th word in the 2nd paragraph from Bytebot. We take great pride in our lawns, not gardens. That's where flowers grow. I get 2 days off a week and usually spend at least one of them cutting grass, edging the driveway and road, working in the garden, again, only a small fraction of the yard, exclusively the part where flowers and vegetables grow. Nothing is more American than sitting outside, having a barbecue and some cheap beer, and enjoying that fresh-cut grass smell. Every state works so differently. They could have been different countries without needing a president. Edit, I have understood what you guys have been trying to teach me. But the laws are so different. The taxes are so different. What's still confusing, the education system is more or less the same, mostly autonomous and free till high school. I mean, states have most of the power. I live in India, but here central government has most of the powers, which sucks. And the central government can make a state ruled by a different party look bad by misusing their powers. But that is hard to do in the US. I mean, US is kinda good but confusing if you move between states. The news portrays Americans as a bunch of ignorant, gun-toting rednecks, but when I travel in the US, they are really nice, friendly and helpful. My car broke down while leaving the Mount Rushmore parking lot and I couldn't get it started again. I must have had 30 other people offer to help in any way possible, either by letting me use their cell phones to call someone, or look under the hood for the trouble, or offer me a ride. I was thankful to everyone. I came away with a good feeling about Americans and turned a bad problem into a not-so-bad problem. Thanks from a Canadian. As a self-proclaimed redneck, I always stop for stranded motorists if I can spare the time. You never know when someone may need an extra pair of hands. I even bought gas for a stranded young couple and their kids. They ran out of gas in a Walmart parking lot and I went off home, got a can of gas, and gave them enough to get down to the gas station. The lady was so shocked when she asked what my major was, and I told her I'm 17 and I'm in high school. She couldn't believe a teenager would be so nice. But it was just a gallon of gas and her kids were very upset, obviously, so I figured it was my time to do a good deed for that day. I, American, was with a group of English co-workers at a bar at a trade show in Atlanta. When we were ordering a drink, a patron at the bar started speaking to me. We have a nice normal 15 minutes conversation as we waited for our drinks at a busy bar. When this concluded, my English co-workers were like, "Where did you know him from?" I am like, "What do you mean?" They are like, "You didn't know him? You spoke to a stranger for over 15 minutes?" I was like, "Yes?" They told me the only way that would happen in the UK is if the man at the bar was trying to sell something. I was dumbfounded. I am like, you go to the bar for dinner for the social interaction. If you wanted to be alone, just order room service. I specifically sit at the bar on business trips to get some human interaction. They could not believe it. I have a really bizarre culture shock example of this as an Australian who lived in LA for a year in my teens. I was buying a skateboard at a store on Santa Monica Boulevard and the sales girl included a free promo sticker with the purchase. On the sticker was a very basic outline drawing of a pair of tits with the word fetish written over them as if in blood, but done very simple and skater style, or written like a typical surf brand or something. Noticing the image on the sticker, the sales girl, who was my age, hesitated and was suddenly apprehensive about giving me a sticker of a sketch of boobs, then had to check with her boss if it was okay. Note a photo, a simple outline sketch that anyone could draw blindfolded, on a small sticker. As someone who grew up on the beach in Australia where women sunbathe topless, this was a really weird culture shock and the first of many I had with Americans and their super conservative attitude towards stuff like nudity that seemed so trivial and a non-issue to me. The way American TV inexplicably censors a woman's behind, or blurs a person's middle finger, or beeps a curse word, starts to make more sense when you see how weirdly conservative and religious they are as a society. Sales tax is required to be separate from the price in many states of the U.S. This is because the shop owner is collecting the tax on behalf of the state and separately listing the tax from the product price on the sales register makes it easy to determine, from the state's perspective, how much tax was collected by the shop owner. This can then be compared to what the shop owner remitted to the state. There are better ways to this now in the electronic age, but states are slow to change and the current system works just fine for the vast majority of situations. How nice and chatty they are really. I think that was the most striking for me living there. It's so easy to start talking to an American. You just have to be within their sight basically. They move a lot so it's less likely that everyone has their established group of friends and family and minds their own business. They're all at ease branching out and meeting new people. They are also quite considerate. I realized how inconsiderate I was because I wasn't used to things like being spatially aware or thinking of others' comfort. Not that I did anything horrible, but it was American small gestures of mindfulness that got me thinking. I had girl apologizing to me for smoking outside a few good meters away from me. People walk in a way that is mindful of the crowd. I think I learned proper walking in NYC, after which many other places in the world irritated the shit out of me with people who just randomly stop in front of you or on an escalator, or don't respect the order of getting in and out of a metro. But I never even thought about these things before. They're also kind of unassuming because there's so many people from different places in one place that it's much harder to make quick judgments about which type is who. I think they also do force eccentricity a bit. It's quite superficial, but just saying it's less likely anyone will think of you as weird for anything. Haha, I've never heard anyone note the lack of spatial awareness before. I moved here to the UK less than a year ago, and all the time I'm telling my wife to move the heck out of someone's way, or tugging on her to move, or pulling out trolley out of the aisle or something. She's always in someone's damn way. People just trot all around without paying attention to where they are, walking in the center of the parking lot when others are trying to park. For example, it's nuts. And when I have mentioned this, people think I am the crazy one. Totally agree with you. I didn't realize how polite Americans are with walkway etiquette until I spent 5 weeks in Italy. People there just don't give a single fuck. I literally brushed shoulders with a lady because we were both walking down a sidewalk. I was on the farthest left side and she was in the middle. Didn't even bother getting out of the way for me. I wanted to say excuse you. Italians will just walk down the middle of the sidewalk and stop to look at a storefront, resulting in you nearly bumping into them. They'll stand in the middle of the sidewalk, notice you coming up on them, and not get out of the way. I've often had to step into the road to walk past people standing in the middle of the sidewalk who didn't have the common courtesy to get out of people's way. Sorry, many ran over. 80% of Americans I met are fucking nice people. I thought the ratio of dick Americans are much higher. Edit 1: I live in Siargao Island where some expats live and surf, so I know a few of them. The only people that are not nice to me is the old man and a Karen. The rest are normal who worked hard to feed their family and to enjoy their peaceful life. Edit 2: I live in US right now. Edit 3: the rest are online. 18%. I just said that I love AMD in a Linus Tech Tips forum because of the competition that they bring, and some Intel fans started attacking me and even stated that Linus promotes AMD because he has 2 million shares on it. Second story: Android versus Apple. I love that I can uninstall BS apps with my Android debugging tool. Third story is the trickle-down effect of stocks. I only said that richer companies will make it cheaper. The consumer goods and stocks go up. Even if it's a little, it's still a % richer than before, even if the rich people get richer. Fourth story is the universal basic income. It just sounds nice if everyone has a basic income that can cover some expenses and use the free money to buy stocks for the future. I just want the opinion of others, not looking for a fight or heated debate. Even though we have different views, we're all humans. As someone from India, the possibilities many Americans feel they have is both confusing to me and admirable. I'm 28 and I already feel the rest of my life is going to work on a rigid schedule. Most people here have very less risk-taking ability, but I read of American stories like this guys who worked as a masseur for a year, then as a swimming coach, then suddenly got into law school and become a lawyer. After hitting his 40s, he got interested in programming, so he became a programmer. Reading biographies of famous American businessmen brings out many such stories. Mainly just the culture shock, I guess. Being Greek, we are some pretty opinionated, loud and blunt people, and if you ask a Greek how they're doing, get ready to actually hear how they're doing. In America, if someone asks how you are, you must reply I'm good, fine, regardless how you're actually feeling. I feel like in America you also have to kinda sugarcoat how you speak. Not to everyone but a lot. In Greece, we won't hesitate to call you fat or ugly if that's what we really think, but in America that's a no-no. You must be polite even if it may not be necessarily true. Also, smiling seems like a big deal in America, but this is just my perspective dealing with Americans. When my grandparents first came to America in 2004, they were pretty shocked that you can pay for gas at the gas pump, and my grandparent really loved Sis's Pizza and requested to eat there at least once a week when they would come to the US. I actually think it's a misconception that you have to say I'm good when people ask you how you're doing in America. It's fine to give a negative answer, it's just that you're supposed to realize that how are you is a casual question and usually isn't an invitation for an extended conversation. For example, if you answered, I'm super tired, I got terrible sleep last night, that's totally normal, and you might have some small talk about why you weren't able to sleep or something. On the other hand, if you launch into a long story about how you got into a fight with your significant other or something, it's like come on, read the room. I just wanted to get the sense of how your day is going. That being said, I think we value positivity, and if you always answer "how are you" with something negative or neutral, you may not be so popular.